Hi, this is Terry Samuel from PMML. Today I'm recapping 2021 in the multifamily market for Montreal and the province of Quebec, and also looking at market statistics for multifamily for the month of December 2021. So an exceptional year marked by different things. First of all, we saw a lot of major transactions happen on the market. Many concrete buildings being sold, many towers being sold. We're seeing transactions, and we've seen transactions in 2021 that were major price-wise, price per door very high, compressed cap rates. Every single time in every single transaction, the professional buyers that were buying these assets, naturally we're talking about REITs, private investment funds, and major building owners, either from the province of Quebec, from Montreal, from the national capital, which is Quebec City, or again from the Ottawa region, the Gatineau region, and also the rest of Canada. All of these buyers are professional buyers. They have experience based on what they've seen on their market. If they're a Montreal-based market, they have that experience. If they're coming from Toronto, they have the Toronto experience, and now they're learning about the Montreal experience and the Quebec experience. So what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of players come from the outside of the province, which have large interests in assets in Montreal and in all the major cities of Quebec. We've been seeing major transactions take place all along the year. And we're seeing a lot of major transactions take place in Montreal, but we're seeing a tendency for major transactions to take place and an increased number of transactions taking place in other cities like Quebec, Sherbrooke, Trois-Rivières, etc. So when you're seeing experienced buyers trying to transact in those territories, you could definitely see that the reason why they're going there is they could definitely have value creation, and maybe that the price per door makes more sense there, maybe that the cap rates for them makes more sense there. So we have people coming into Montreal, some buyers from Montreal are going to buy elsewhere, and we have buyers from the outside buying directly into other major cities other than Montreal. We've seen surges in transactions take place at certain periods of the year. So basically what happened is that the greater area of Montreal, when you're looking at multifamily assets sold every month, it varies between say 265 to 325 million per month. So every month between 261 million and 325, 330 million dollars basically is about the tendency, and the average is say 280 to 300 million per year, per month. So we're seeing that every month happen, which is already a very good volume for a city like Montreal, the greater area of Montreal. And that's basically everything to do with existing multifamily assets. That does not include land development for multifamily assets. So when you're combining that into the game, it's pretty interesting. The other thing that we're seeing is that even if every month we had that number that was always around the 300 million, we had a surge take place in the month of July and August. So we went up to 566 million approximately in transactions compared to a $300 million market. And we went up to 426 million in transaction in the month of August. So you have to understand where that surge is coming from. And that surge is coming from an increased number of properties being refinanced, an increased number of properties being transacted coming into the system at the same time. And of course, when it's like when you have an industrial manufacturing plant, and that manufacturing plant can produce say 1,000 of these tables per day, and you're putting material to produce 2,000 tables like these per day into the system, what's going to happen? Well, the system is always going to produce 1,000 tables a day, and that's what happened. So we had a lot of transactions that were supposed to take place in April, May, June, July, that finally took place in July, August, September. So even if we had surges in transactions, if you're taking those numbers, if you're taking that 566 million and you're just redistributing it on the previous months, well, then you're still going to have an increased market of, say, 350 million per month. So definitely multifamily in Quebec is performing and has performed very well in 2021. Now, that's for the bigger transactions. Of course, some of these players are coming in with US dollars. We have money coming from New York right now, which is pumped into the Montreal market. Why? Because New York as a multifamily market is not doing very good right now. And New York has always performed, even if though it had its highs and lows, it was always a performant market. And a lot of the investors which are on the American side in New York saw the opportunity of saying, well, wait a minute, okay, we're doing well here. Now we have a bear market. What can we do with it? So we have to diversify the way we work. And now by diversifying, what happens is you would start looking at major cities which are close by. Major cities which are close by, you have Boston, you have New Jersey, you have Montreal, you have Toronto. Any major asset city which resembles yours as far as densification, as far as population, as far as they're going to buy, these people that are coming from these states are going to buy in an environment that they know. And Montreal is very similar to New York in such a fact that it's very multi-ethnic. It's very, it has European based, it has Anglo-Saxon based tenants in there. So it's a very attractive market. And also what's happening is that these players that are coming from the United States are looking at other major REITs based in Canada buying in Montreal. And they're saying, well, if that major REIT is buying in Montreal, it's because that major REIT did its underwriting and found that Montreal is an interesting market. So automatically, I'll put it on top of my list. I'll try to figure out why that REIT is buying in Montreal. How much assets has that REIT bought? Is there other people doing it? What's happening in the Montreal market? And I've seen many people call me. I have my monthly video that I make every month on the market, and people are asking me questions on how's the market in Montreal, etc. Where could I buy? Can I buy land to build on, etc. So that money is being pumped in Montreal right now. So that's very interesting. So we had a lot of transactions in 2021 in multifamily market. We had buyers coming in from the outside of the province coming in. We had owners in the province of Quebec that started to refinance their buildings to a maximum of the economic value base. So basically what's happening is in the past, the major owners used to, refinance some buildings from time to time, but always keep their mortgages going lower and lower every 5 years, not refinancing at higher amounts. The tendency we're seeing now is we're seeing them refinance at maximum, conventional. We're also seeing them use the CHMC, which permits a longer amortization period, lower interest rates, and better conditions of financing. So we're seeing them pay in the market the financing premium to go CHMC and refinance their buildings to a max, come back into the market. So there's a lot of liquidity that was available that came into the market in 2020 and 2021, and that maintained prices high, and that maintained a large demand for the market in Montreal and in the province of Quebec. So that's also something that is attracting the buyers from the US. There's not that many European buyers coming into Montreal. If they're doing it through private investments funds, where basically they're investing into REITs on the shareholders market, and they're coming in that way into the market also. So that was a tendency. Now, prices were increasing all along the year. Cap rates were decreasing. Return was also decreasing slightly during the year, but was very, even though the return is decreasing, the capacity for return in province of Quebec is so large that we can still pick up loss in return and still be very competitive with the North American market. Another thing is that we've been seeing the interest rates rise. And what happens is when you see the interest rates rise through the year, historically in the past, what happens is that your financing capacity on multifamily is based on revenues and expenses. It's your net revenue in the larger assets that's going to permit you to go get financing. Now, over time, that financing amount has a certain capacity, but when you rise interest rates on the market, you're diminishing the capacity of the building to perform. And if you want to maintain your prices, you're required to put more cash down on an asset when you buy it. And that's exactly what's happening in the Montreal market right now. So although the interest rates are going up, the capacity to optimize the buildings is maintained, and that's still encouraging the buyers to buy. Apart from that, a lot of owners have a lot of liquidity that they have to put somewhere. And where are they going to put it first? They're going to put it into solid assets. Although we have cryptocurrency, which is very popular, we could feel it on the market. It's a new tendency. The reason why a lot of the investors are investing and have invested in the past into brick and wood is because it's a stable asset and it has stable return. So that's a tendency in Montreal right now. So although the interest rates are going up in the province of Quebec also, we still see we're still maintaining correct prices on the market, and we still have the capacity to make the deals lucrative by giving the opportunity for the buyers to take out equity over time on the assets being purchased. So that's where the Montreal market is right now. New construction, definitely a tendency in 2021. A lot of multifamily was built, and a lot of multifamily is going to be developed in the next years. A lot of purchasers have bought buildings, tore them down, changed the zoning on them, and are now ready to build in the next few years. And you're going to see multifamily assets being built in the next few years. The lands have been purchased, etc. What was popular in 2021 were pieces of land ready to build on. Now, when you're buying a piece of land, by the time you develop it, sometimes it could take 3, 4, 5 years, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on zoning and depending on the tendency in the city and depending on a bunch of factors which are outside of the transaction. Sometimes you have to do land banking. But what was popular in 2021, where I was able to sell a lot of pieces of land at a good pricing and fast, was when we had the permits to build, or almost the permits to build on the pieces of land. And that's when the assets were very interesting for the market. Why? Because the contractors and the developers wanted to be able to pay the price they needed to pay for the land, but be able to build in a controlled market. To be able to build within the next 18 months is very important for the investors right now. Now, let's go to my top 5. I always like to talk about my top 5 monthly. 2021 was great, and we're ending the year with major transactions. A lot of concrete buildings. The first one is very, very close to, it's in the Côte des Neiges area, very close to the Mount Royal. For those who know Montreal, it's a mountain right in the center of the city, right next to downtown. It's a green space, which is much appreciated, and you could circulate easily around that green space to go all around Montreal to the residential areas and also to downtown Montreal, and even go down to Old Port of Montreal, where you have the river, etc. So it's an asset which is interesting for the tenants. Large square footage, 260 doors, sold from a private investment fund to a REIT. A transaction that took place close to $310,000 per door. That asset had everything in it: elevator, services, hot water paid by the owner, heating paid by the owner, and that's a tendency on the market right now. So when you're buying an asset where the energy costs are paid by the owner, often the buyer would try to transfer those energy costs to the tenants. That's one tendency, that's one strategy, or to capitalize on it. There's a large tendency on the market right now for tenants to want, renovated units. Most of the population in Quebec right now, they don't want to buy an asset, they want to rent, they want comfort. And that comfort is coming from COVID, and that tendency was saw in 2020 and 2021 by all of the major purchases that the buyers were doing. So basically the tenants were purchasing a lot of furniture for home, revamping their units, buying, consuming a lot off internet. And that tendency created comfort, and people want to maintain that comfort. That's what COVID created. The tenants want comfort. They want either new units, or they want greatly refurbished units, and they want a lifestyle to go with it. And one of those tendencies is for the tenant to have only one bill to pay. So the tenant pays the rent, and then the owner pays for energy costs, the owner pays for maintenance, the owner pays for internet, the owner pays for cable. If we have one bill for the tenant is going to feel very comfortable, even though paying the utility bill is very easy. It takes 3 minutes off internet. That's what people want today. They want a one-stop package, one-stop shop, and they want to be flexible. If they don't like where they're living anymore, they want to be able to pick up their things and just leave to go to the next location. And that's why there's a large tendency right now to furnish with the rentals the appliances, furnish the curtains, furnish the blinds, etc., so that the tenant can be very, very flexible in his in and out, deliver the unit painted, cleaned, etc. People like that. They're ready to pay the extra $150, $200 just to have one bill and to have lifestyle, etc. So it makes a lot of sense. This asset sold for $80 million, so it's 21 stories. Very interesting. Now I like to speak about Quebec City often because there's a lot of large assets being sold in Quebec City, and this one sold in the old Quebec, which is more or less known internationally for its touristic area. But in Quebec, there's a lot of, it's like Ottawa. Ottawa, you have a lot of public servants. In Quebec City, you have a lot of public servants also because you have the Quebec government, which is based there, but you also have a lot of buildings of the Canadian government, which are based there. You have the Coast Guard, etc. Everything is in Quebec City. So what happens is that those people have good salaries and have good also, perks that go with their job. So often the dental plan is taken care of. They have paid public transportation, etc. So they have extra money for the rent, basically. And we're seeing a lot of larger assets being transacted in Quebec City. And Quebec City is becoming very interesting. We're seeing REITs purchased there. We're seeing major players from Montreal go to Quebec City. So very interesting. So this asset sold for $180,000 per door, 13 stories, heating, hot water included, with services, of course. So that's a real tendency right now. Another building on Sherbrooke West, very well located, close to downtown Montreal, close to the subway stations, walking distance to the building, to the Mount Royal, walking distance to downtown Montreal. Everything can be done by foot. You don't need a vehicle there. You could bike or walk wherever you need to go. This asset was sold from a private investor to another one. It has a commercial main floor. Everything is included into the building, of course, as far as energy costs for the tenants. 21 stories, $244,000 per door, which is a little on the low side when you're considering that a lot of smaller asset brick and wood in that area are about $250,000 per door. So definitely a good purchase for the buyer in this case. Another asset right in front of the La Fontaine Park. The La Fontaine Park is the equivalent of New York. If you're living in New York, the La Fontaine Park is like Central Park. And a REIT purchased this building. It's a concrete building, 121 doors, 14 stories. It went for $281,000 per door. A little on the low end. But what you have to know here is that when a REIT is purchasing, or a private investment fund is purchasing this asset and is going to see its shareholders and saying, well, listen, maybe you don't know of Montreal because you're based in British Columbia, Alberta, Toronto, New York, whatever, because you're investing into my shares as a REIT, as a public, when the shares are public. Even if you don't know that asset, well, here's what's similar with New York. It's right in front of the La Fontaine Park, a big public park in the area. There's a lot of European clientele that rent out the units. It's close to all services. You could go by foot. That's a language that the investors understand because they're able to relate with their own hometown. So for example, the New Yorkers are ready to relate to, well, a building on the side of Central Park makes sense. It's an asset that's going to pick up in speed and in value over time very easily. So that's why this asset was that interesting, and that's why it went relatively fast, and that's why it's going to maintain value over time. We're back to Quebec City for my last transaction. I would like to speak to you again about Quebec City because I've been seeing large transactions take place here. So here it's a 87 door, about approximately $20 million in transaction. Concrete, but only 3 stories high and horizontal and not a vertical construction. Close to everything, hot water, electricity included, the same model that we've been seeing before. And this transaction went for $226,000 per door approximately, which is on the high end, but which made a lot of sense when I'm looking at who's the buyer behind of it. So the buyer owns over 1,000 doors. For him, mostly based in Montreal, has assets in Quebec. For him, it made sense to just add on to his existing portfolios and buy a chunk of property at the same place to control the rental values in that area. So if we sum up, we're finishing the year with large transactions that probably needed to take place in the calendar year of 2021, fiscally speaking. We're finishing with tendencies of a price per door which is high and maintained, a compressed cap rate, interest rates slightly going up. It's going to be very interesting to see how the 2022 market is going to perform. What I could say is the tendency should be maintained because we have a lot of players coming from the outside. We have a lot of liquidity on the market right now, so a lot of the players have the capacity to purchase large pieces of land, to build multifamily and assets. So there's a lot of money on the market. Once the interest rates rise slowly, the market should be maintained. So very lucrative year. Multifamily is very strong right now in Montreal, very strong in Quebec City. We're seeing the multifamily market develop very, very fast in all the major cities in the province of Quebec, also Sherbrooke, Gatineau, Three Rivers, and even some transactions taking place into other major cities like Chicoutimi, which are very smaller and much more up north by major players. So stay tuned. For the smaller assets we have for sale, you could go and check out GoPlex. That's our site for the smaller assets. For standard multifamily, PMML.ca, landdev.ai, that has everything to do with the pieces of land that we have for sale. We have over 75 pieces of land for sale right now, and that's moving quite fast. We do commercial industrial rental. If you have any questions, I'm a phone call away. If you have questions, you want to evaluate a building, you have questions on the market, anywhere in the province of Quebec, pick up the phone, call me, send me an email. It's going to be a pleasure for me to take some time with you and to look over the market. And follow me in my next transaction report that will take place in the month of January 2022. Take care.